Hello and welcome to today's workshop, Reader's Advisory Ideas and Practice, presented by Booklist. For those of you who weren't here a minute ago, my name is Susan McGuire and I'm the Senior Editor for Collection Management and Library Outreach here at Booklist. We'd like to take a minute to thank our sponsor, Penguin Random House Library Marketing, for their generous support of this program. We'll send out some additional resources and recommendations from our sponsor in tomorrow's follow-up materials, and we'll showcase some of those resources throughout the program. Before we begin with today's program, I'd like to go over some technical details. Links to all of today's slide presentations were included in the reminder email you received from Zoom 1 hour ago. To download them, please open that email, scroll to the bottom, and click on the links located there. We will send PDFs of all these slides, along with additional materials from our sponsor, to everyone tomorrow. If you have any trouble locating these materials, please contact us at webinars@booklistonline.com. Booklist offers closed captioning on all webinars. To enable or disable them on your screen, please look for and click the Show Captions icon on the toolbar mentioned earlier. If you choose to enable subtitles, you can adjust the size of them at any time by selecting Caption Settings. The audience is in listen-only mode, but we encourage everyone to submit your questions in the Q&A box. Our panelists will be grabbing questions from this box throughout their presentation, and we will be sure to pass along all unanswered questions to our panelists after the webinar so they can follow up via email. The chat box will also remain open throughout the entire program, and we will send the chat messages along with our follow-up materials to everyone tomorrow. And finally, Booklist expects all participants to maintain an atmosphere of respect and fairness. Anyone who violates this standard of behavior, including engaging in any form of harassment, may, at the discretion of the organizers, be immediately removed. We are midway through our afternoon of workshops planned for today, all designed to keep you up to speed on both the ideas and practice that will enhance your RA game. You can see today's schedule on the screen. We're about to begin Nonfiction Reader's Advisory session. And please note that you are welcome to attend all of these sessions and will receive a recording of every session tomorrow. So let's get started with our next workshop, Nonfiction Reader's Advisory, presented by Stephanie Sendaula and Allie Stevens. Allie Stevens is the director of Calhoun County Library, a very small rural library in southern Arkansas. Allie currently reviews YA books and graphic novels for Kirkus, Booklist, and SLJ, and is a member of the YALSA Board of Directors. Stephanie Sendaula is a New Jersey-based librarian with experience in outreach, reference, and reader's advisory at both public and academic libraries. She is currently programming and outreach specialist at Library Link NJ. Welcome, Allie and Stephanie. The floor is yours.
Hi, y'all.
Hi, everyone.
Let me share our presentation. There we go. Okay. Stephanie, we can do a little extra introduction if you want. We hadn't talked about it, but they did. So,
Sure.
In addition to on the YALSA board and being a director in South Arkansas, I have been on the YALSA Awards and Selected List Oversight Committee for the past couple of years, and I'm a past coordinator of the BFYA list and the Quick Picks for Reluctant Readers list, and a former member of the Great Graphic Novels for Teens list. I write reviews, but I also write a lot of features for Booklist and SLJ, and my expertise is definitely pretty squarely in the YA realm. So that's most of my recommendations today are going to be in that sphere. So, Stephanie?
Yes, and everyone can see my screen. Everything looks good?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yes, well, hi, everyone. I'm so happy to see familiar faces and names here, and so many New Jersey people as well. So again, my name is Stephanie Sendaula. I have lots of experience in nonfiction readers advisory, which is one of my passions. Before my current job, I was an editor at Library Journal for almost a decade, doing nonfiction book reviews. I recognize a lot of your names from there. So we're pretty much hand selling nonfiction to people who may or may not read nonfiction. So I'm really excited for this talk, and Allie and I have a great presentation planned for you. Very biased, our slides are amazing. So I'm excited to go ahead and just dive in. Hello, fellow New Jersey people in the chat. So happy to see you guys.
I saw in the chat that somebody might be seeing a black bar on my screen. Is it okay for?
Yeah, everything looks good for me. Yeah, you look good.
I can't see anything, so. All right. So we are going to talk about why and how to use nonfiction in your everyday readers advisory interactions. I think a lot of times when we think about nonfiction, we think about readers who specifically and only read nonfiction. But you can use these books in so many different ways for patrons who may not think to reach for them. It's a really great way to open up other reading avenues for our patrons that they may not have thought about yet. And so Stephanie and I are going to talk about how to connect readers to these nonfiction titles, what sort of evaluative questions you can ask about nonfiction books, and we're also going to suggest some of our favorite titles. Okay, so some of the qualities that nonfiction has that you don't find in a lot of fiction titles are these really rich details and extra visual pieces. Pictures, maps, charts, and indexes bring deeper engagement for readers. Nonfiction titles can range in tone. You know, you've got some that are very dense and academic, some that are very lighthearted and easier to read. And so there really is something for every type of reader inside of the nonfiction world. Nonfiction books are really good at providing an introductory overview of a topic. They can be really accessible in design and content, both from an ability standpoint in terms of how the information is arranged, but also they can be more emotionally and academically accessible for readers as well. Nonfiction usually or often includes high interest topics and really useful subjects. So practical and pragmatic things that patrons can use in their everyday lives, and topics that are, you know, just extremely interesting. Often made into TV shows and movies because they're cinematic in that they are dramatic. Okay, Stephanie's turn.
Yes, and we listen and we don't judge. So Allie and I are chronically online. So if you're also chronically online and on TikTok and Instagram, we hope you get this reference. We just thought it was really fun. So for nonfiction, we're doing Readers Advisory. I like how people saw this and snorted. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate that response. So we had to judge our cover and our details a little bit. So I actually have a book I got from Norton, a galley, of Love Queenie, which some of you may have heard of. I like doing this in real time because it helps me just be able to talk about judging the cover and the details of a book. So for Love Queenie, which is a biography of Merle Oberon, Hollywood's first South Asian star, this is coming out in March, so pretty much this month. So judging the subtitle, what does it tell you? Pretty straightforward here. It tells me what the book is about. Looking at blurbs, who wrote them. So the blurbs are from fellow journalists. So I can tell this is pretty accessible, pretty much for like a lay person, not someone who's overly academic. This is a new author, which is good to know. If you're doing like a debut author panel, which would be great. Table of contents. These table of contents is actually kind of fun here. It's kind of quirky, so kind of tells me a little bit of humor here, not taking itself too seriously. I love the cover judges in the comments there. So this is going to have a little fun, even though it is a biography. Author on front or the flap. The authors on the back flap have a nice little bio. He's a journalist, so very journalistic book, and he lives nearby in Brooklyn, so very exciting. And for the next slide, so now the fun part, I mean, this is all fun for me, judging the details. So writing style here, just, you know, a brief browse through. I did not read this book at all. Just browsing through, very accessible interior design. Again, really kind of like cute chapter titles here. So again, very accessible. So I would give this to someone off the top of my head, kind of almost along like All That She Carried from a few years ago. Just very fast paced, easy read. Lots of extras, lots of pictures, which I love a biography with pictures. So I have to be biased here. There's some bibliography, notes, index, further reading. Filmography is really great too. Love this. Oh, okay. So sorry, no, people couldn't see the book. Holding it up here a little bit. There you go, in case people want to see it. Okay, And then index, a brief index, a very long bibliography here, which is pretty great. So if you want further reading, it's a good starting point. There's a lot of notes here for people who want further notes here. No citations or footnotes, but I think the notes and bibliography are kind of enough for people who want to dive into further reading. So that would be really fun. And based on this, the audience, definitely a layperson. Again, I would give this to someone who likes historical fiction, women's biographies. All the pictures throughout that I've noticed are just her in these like really nice like gowns and at Hollywood events. So maybe even someone who loves pop culture books, popular just social sciences, pop culture. So I think this would be a good book that I would just hand pitch to be like, hey, if you like women's stories, women's biography, maybe even film studies, pop culture in general, lots of movie references in here. So yes, beautiful gowns, excellent. Again, I love a good reference here, so I appreciate you guys. Yeah, so this is exactly what I would give to someone who's just looking for a biography that isn't too long. It's less than 300 pages, and I appreciate that. So that's how I would judge the cover and the details in less than 5 minutes. So thanks for coming along with me, you guys. So, and I think Allie, you're up next.
I think that's a really perfect example of how it can be faster to get a very deep evaluation on a nonfiction book than on, a prose fiction book sometimes.
Yes, I'm gonna hold up the book
yeah,
again so people can take a look just
yes,
for another
Queenie.
moment here. Yes, it is Love Queenie. It's coming out from Norton this month. So
Also, I love when nonfiction books include a bibliography because I read
yes,
a lot of fiction books included like, if this interested you, also read these books list in the back of it. So love that about nonfiction.
completely agree.
I find that nonfiction is great for accessibility. The browsability of nonfiction can create more entry points, and I'm going to point this out on a couple of example books in a few minutes, but you can kind of, let the book fall open, and wherever it lands is a good enough place to start looking at the book. And I think for younger readers in particular who are maybe intimidated by the size of books as they age up and the books get bigger, that's very comfortable to just be able to, let this book open and then see what I read, not feel like you have to start at the beginning and read the whole thing. Larger type and fewer words spreads the information out on the page, which is great for readers with conditions like dyslexia or ADHD. It also makes it more visible for people with visual problems. And I think it also helps with attention, and that design being so engaging makes the book more magnetic for a student's eyes, right? It's less easy to get distracted from this thing that's bright and colorful. Also for accessibility in nonfiction, memoirs from shared and underrepresented groups can provide textual evidence on the shelf for the existence of people in reality in a way that I think is really important for our young people and everybody in our libraries to be able to see. And I love memoirs for that reason. I love being able to provide examples of actual people from different identities living actual lives for my young people to be able to see. One of the types of nonfiction that I find is really accessible even for adult readers are YA adaptations of adult nonfiction titles. So Stamped is amazing, but it is a doorstopper. And Jason Reynolds' rewrite of Stamped is a really accessible introduction. I read it first. I've read them both, but I read Jason's version first, and it really helped me get my head around what I was going to encounter and what was going to happen in the bigger book. This is also really great for adults who don't have all the time in the world, but are still really interested in a particular topic. They can get a good overview from a YA adaptation in 250 or 300 pages instead of 600 pages. Let's see. They're a good starting place for some subjects and plenty good ending place for others. Oh, I did also want to say that YA adaptations, in particular biographies, science topics, and history make for really good YA adaptations. Those are some of my favorites. All right. Another thing that nonfiction has that makes it very intriguing and adaptable and accessible for young people and for everyone is the format flexibility. Most fiction books are going to be the same or relatively the same size. They are black ink on white paper. Even if the end pages are cool or if they have neat design at the chapter headings, they're not going to have the same full color spreads that a lot of nonfiction titles are going to have. You're going to have odd shapes, odd sizes, different types of paper, and different types of ink on the paper. And all of those things add up to, visual interests that keep people engaged with the book in their hand. Nonfiction also comes in everything from short essay length pieces to long narrative nonfictions to the sort of browsable offerings that we talked about earlier. For those browsable books. So cookbooks are amazing for being browsable. You can flip through them, find things, mark certain pages to come back to, skip over the things you don't like. It's not a book where I think anyone feels the expectation to sit down and read a cookbook cover to cover. The expectation is that you will bounce in and out. Brazen is really good in that it also is not one where you need to sit down and read it cover to cover. You could, certainly, and it's full of information, but it's also broken up in such a way that you can just bounce in and out of it. Same with all of these here. And for some of my more, I hate to use the word reluctant, but less excited readers, I try to meet them where they are, and devotional books tend to be really good for that. There are devotional books out now that are more inclusive, that allow for my religious students space to also exist within the library, and those books tend to be really browsable too. Okay, Stephanie, back to you.
Hi, all. Yeah, sorry, my video was a little wonky. So going for browsable options for adults. So cookbooks are always a great option here. Nadia Hussein, not going in order again, from Great British Bake Off is a lovely place to start. I know Start Here has been a great cookbook the past 2 years. Sola is lovely. So I know my video is a little wonky, everyone. I'm so sorry about that. So I will try to add it back in. Let's see. Okay. I'm so sorry. I'll just stay muted for now. Okay. And then Tabitha Brown for self-help is also a great option here. Travel books like Anthony Bourdain's are also great. And then Bad Feminists, literary collections are always a great option for browsable options as well. So I just wanted to shout that out and turn it back to Allie. I'll work on my video just temporarily.
So high interest subjects, when I was looking at this part of our presentation right before we started, I thought all of the books on the next slide, all the YA books that I picked, would all make a really good podcast. So I kind of think that high interest and potential podcast subject, there's a lot of overlap here. People love to read memoirs of the lives of normal and abnormal people. Memoirs have not been as popular recently as they were for a long time, but I kind of think they're going to make a comeback. Somebody in the chat mentioned Nadia Hussein's new cookbook. I love her so much, just like personally, but her cookbook and TV show are a really good example of how there's this crossover, right? And a lot of times I think our nonfiction stuff comes from TV or ends up on TV, and then people see it there and then come looking for the books. Military history also is a high interest subject for my circulation, and I'm sure many of yours. And military history books, I think, tend to have a pretty good crossover with fiction readers of certain types of suspense thrillers. There's a heightened suspense to them that I find those readers enjoy. Let's see. Okay, so Stephanie will come back in a minute, I'm sure, and talk about her high interest adult picks. But like I said, every single one of these high interest YA titles would make a really excellent podcast. Poisonous Plants, Ghost Stories, Jungle Cults. That's actually the whatever they're called, the children, my brain just erased what it was called. That Urban Legends Illustrated History is absolutely fabulous if you haven't looked at it. Side Quest is a visual history. It's a graphic novel about role-playing games. So the Dungeons and Dragons crowd gets a big hit out of that one. Art of Drag is one of the more beautifully drawn pieces I've seen. And the conversation about drag is absolutely everywhere. So that's a really good one to have in your collection for that. And then Kekla Magoon's Revolution in Our Time, which, of course. Stephanie, are you there? Did you want to talk about your high interest?
Yeah, I can chime in here. Yeah, sorry, my camera's not working for whatever reason, so I'm sorry, everyone. So for high interest adult, A Walk in the Park by Kevin Furcado, which won a National Book Award last year, is a great option. A nice good travel log here. The Message by Ta-Nehisi Coates, which I think many of us have heard about, another bestseller that is good for also YA crossover, as Allie was mentioning, some crossover titles as well. The Wager by David Gran, author of Killers of the Flower Moon. Again, I feel like action and adventure is a nice good escapism, especially as of late. So this is also a great option just for anyone who's new to nonfiction, doesn't know where to start. Our favorite, Dolly Parton, we all love Dolly Parton here. So this is also a great option. Cookbooks, again, very high interest, very browsable, and Dolly Parton's a national treasure. Of course, very biased, but it's true. And then Hampton Size, The Wide Wide Sea, one of the bestsellers from last year. Again, a nice action adventure. I think we all need some escapism, especially right now. So I think this is also a great option for people who are just looking to get started reading nonfiction and don't know where to start. Oh yeah, and we can go to the next slide.
When we were putting this together, this slide actually just kind of doesn't really fit with the rest of the presentation necessarily, or not in this spot, maybe, I'm not sure. It just stuck out to me that I have this abundance of really deeply emotional memoirs for teenagers. I think it's that transitional period in their life, and adults look back at this and it lends itself so well to these really powerful memoirs. And every adult reader that I've ever given these to has also really enjoyed them. And so I think they're something not to miss when you are suggesting memoirs to memoir readers, and when you just have, general graphic novel readers. These are heavy hitters for me in our collection for sure. Let's see. Okay, now I think this is my favorite part of this whole presentation. So these are always by nonfiction authors. I'm going to start with the YA ones. I forgot to go back and add Dashka Slater to this list. The 57 Bus and Dashka's newest one are very important additions to your collection. So if you don't have them, make sure you get them. Steve Shankin does history. His books are, to a one, beloved by readers who like everything from mystery thrillers to military stories to, I don't know, of many readers that haven't found at least one of them that they love. Don Brown does graphic novels. You've probably seen Fever Year, and I blanked again. No Place to Hide, I think, is the title of his other one that just came out. Philip Hoos does sports nonfiction, which there are frankly not enough sports books in the world for my readers. Elliot Schrafer's environmental nonfiction reads like animal, like middle grade animal fiction, but it's nonfiction. And so middle grade animal lover readers are a great match for Elliot Schrafer. Gail Jarrow does dark medical history stuff. The most recent one, or the next one, comes out in September of this year. It's called Spirit Sleuths, and it's debunking ghost stories. I haven't read it yet, but it sounds fantastic, and all of her previous books have been as well. Let's see. Jarrett Krasaska, you guys are familiar with Hey Kiddo. And then Paula Yu is the last one that I'll mention. And she wrote Rising from the Ashes, which won many awards. And is an unmissable one. And it also is very good at the sort of multimedia shifting visual design that I think makes nonfiction for this age range so powerful. Okay, Stephanie, your turn.
Yes. Okay. So this is not comprehensive. I want to say that up front. There's at least like 20 more authors I could actually probably include for must-buy nonfiction authors. So just to start, Isabel Wilkerson, author of The Warmth of Other Suns, which is a phenomenal book, which many of you probably already know. Definitely a must-buy author. David Grand, who I mentioned earlier, authors of Killers of the Flower Moon. Eric Foner writes some really comprehensive histories. I could also add for histories David McCullough for biography / history, and Nathaniel Philbrook for history. So lots of good must-know history authors that are kind of just sure bets. Eric Larson, who's written several books like Dead Week. I read the latest. It's the latest book from last year about like the World Fair in Chicago. That was a really good one. So again, those are just like really nice reads if you're not really sure where to start. His books are always a good place. Devil in the White City, thank you, Emily. That was a really good book too. I love that book too. I usually don't read those type of books, and I read that and I was like, oh, I'm very interested in like historical like books now. So Matthew Desmond, who's written a few books, Evicted won a Pulitzer Prize a few years ago. He wrote a book about poverty in America recently. Definitely a latest must buy. I would say for memoirs latest, Tara Westover is still in demand. Her book Educated is still of interest, at least in my area. I know some schools are using it for curriculum. Also, Michelle Zauner, author of Crying in H Mart, is a great one. I would also say Mary Carr for older memoirs. Her books still have interest in my area as well. Mary Roach for popular science. Her books are hilarious. I should give also an addition here, Mary and other science authors, they don't kind of get overlooked in terms of fiction authors. So if you're doing book visits or book clubs, they are happy to come visit. I know Allie can attest to this. Nonfiction authors kind of get overlooked when you're doing like your summer reading programs or your book visits. So definitely reach out to them. They are always happy to hear from librarians and support library staff. Yes, Bill Bryson is a great in a chat. Fantastic author, another must read. Again, with Doris Kearns Goodwin, someone put in a chat too. I would completely agree with all of those as well. I mentioned before Nadia Hussein. There's so many good chefs that you could also include. I know Melissa Clark is a New York Times winning cookbook author. Her books are probably also good, like Good Americana. I agree with Robin Wall Kimmerer. See, I always put like these names out and people are like, what about these in the chat? Lauren Hillebrand is also great for Seabiscuit and Unbroken. Those are still in demand even years later. So I would also, yes, agree with Erin Jean McDowell. She just did a cookbook virtual visit for me recently. So if you're doing some programming, I would definitely reach out. Again, these authors want to hear from you. And again, not comprehensive. Ina's a great starting point. Also some good self-help going back. Tabitha Brown, maybe Susan Cain for Quiet. And she has another book recently. So Ruth Reichel's a good cookbook author. Again, I could think of at least like 10 more people off the top of my head, but not comprehensive. But if you're thinking of, you don't know where to start, you just want to jump in, this is a great place to start. And yeah, take options from these people, from everyone in the chat. These are all great ideas that everyone is sharing. So yes, that is my rant for always buy nonfiction authors, and definitely invite them for your book clubs and your virtual author visits. I agree, Jeremy. We need a second list of all the ones we're talking about. I could do a whole panel just on these must-buy nonfiction authors.
I could do a whole one just on true crime.
Yes.
Just on one of these categories. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And what next? This is one of the things I always love, like just talking about too, is like historical anniversaries are really great tie-in, especially doing nonfiction readers advisory. So if you're not sure where to start, there are a couple websites, like historical websites that kind of track these anniversaries. So it's like 100 years since World War II, because it's 2025. And then 1945. Wait, no, that's 80 years. Sorry. Yeah, again, this is why I'm a librarian, not a math major. So again, just thinking of all these historical anniversaries, you can always tie it in. I know for the Royals, like Royals is always trendy. Again, I'm also love like historical books too. So you could tie it with any royals, like Queen Victoria, any like kind of like, you know, you can just make it up. People just love to hear this. Yeah, like I guess in the chat, like you can just kind of tie it into like anything royals, anything historical, anything Olympics. I know Olympics is right around the corner, which is wild to say because we just had the Olympics. So yeah, anything you can think of, tied in with an anniversary and just make it fun. And patrons really love when you do that too. It makes it fun for them because then they're just like, oh, I didn't know that this was, you know, 20 years since. I know I did a big one when Princess Diana died. After the 20th anniversary, which, again, wild to think about. We did a whole like royalist retrospective, and that was really fun, and people really liked it. JFK anniversaries are huge, so you can do like 30, you know, past 35 years. So 50 years, 55 years, etc. So yeah, just make it fun, and people will love that. Encourage patron feedback. Again, people love to tell you what you think. You guys are all library staff. You know that people are not shy to tell you how they feel, what they think. So if you have some like, you know, regular patrons that come in and say like, oh, what about this? Or have you considered this? Take it into consideration. Again, not every advice is a winner. We know that. But, you know, just listen to what they have to say. Sometimes they might know about an anniversary of anything. Oh, Emily, I like the 50th anniversary of Jaws. That could be like a whole like theater or like film, like, you know, panel right there.
All
So many
ages, because
ideas.
man, do the kids love sharks.
Yeah, I was like, sharks, you could definitely do sharks. Everyone loves sharks. Yeah, like Shark Week, you could just tie that in. Yeah, like a beach display. Like there's so many ideas. I already have ideas right now.
Love
So
that.
yeah, perfect. Yeah, and share staff picks. Again, people read it all across like the spectrum here for nonfiction. So asking your coworkers, sometimes I get stuck in my rut. I love memoirs and history, but I don't always branch out as much as I'd like. So I'm like, hey, what are you reading? Can you share what you're reading? And that gives me ideas and helps me recommend books to people. Humble pie is also really funny. I agree, everyone. And then be curious. Always be curious. That's kind of the best part about what we do as a librarian and as library staff. But just be curious about what people are reading, what they're watching. If you work on a reference desk, kind of taking note of like what they're listening to, what they're reading, just kind of helps you get familiar with, you know, Reader's Advisory, and it helps with reference and programming as well. I think for me, it all goes kind of hand in hand there. So yes, that was my little rant. So I appreciate you guys bearing with me. I love all the comments in the chat too. So many
Yeah,
great ideas.
what Becky just said, I was gonna say that it's really cool to sprinkle some nonfiction in with your fiction displays when you find
Yes.
good pairings of things that go together, because like I said in the beginning, I think a lot of times people don't think about the nonfiction selections and they don't know what might be over here that might fit with their interests.
Yes, completely agree. Also, like Stephen Prusett for popular science is a really great choice for must-read author as well. I had to shut that in there. But yeah, so next slide.
Oh, that's me.
Yeah, no, it's okay. And we're chat all day, you guys. So how to keep up. And again, this is not comprehensive. I feel like there's so many ways you can keep up. And this is just, you know, do what works best for you. I always advise. This is about half of what I do, and I can share some other resources as well. So Edelweiss and NetGalley, which I'm sure many of you are already familiar with. I know we all get a ton of email, I know, but signing up for their newsletters is really helpful just to know what's coming out for nonfiction. Because even for me, sometimes it's really hard to keep up. And so seconding to that, awards, like there's so many awards as well. Some National Book Award, Carnegie Award, and there's others. I know ALA has some nonfiction Rusa notables, which for me are always really helpful just to know what's trendy, what's buzzy, what are people talking about. Their list selection is always very good. Other awards like Man Booker Awards. I know Alex was talking about horror earlier in a previous workshop. There's some really good horror nonfiction. I know Becky in a chat can attest to that. So horror nonfiction, true crime. So keeping up with those awards as well. And then as other publisher emails and catalogs. And like Alex was saying, social media, I know it's not our favorite. It's hard to keep up, but Blue Sky is where a lot of publishers and authors are now. So lurking is great. I'm on Blue Sky. I don't chat as much as I like because another social media platform, it's a lot, but lurking is a great way to stay up to date. And if you want more emails, sign up for publisher emails just to know what's coming out and to stay up to date. Very biased. I love LJ's Book Pulse, which is a daily kind of list of like what's being talked about, where it's like who's on like NPR, who's on a Today Show, who's on where. So that's really good just to know what's trending. And I do cover popular nonfiction, which is very helpful, especially for me, for memoirs and history books. Shelf awareness is really great. I also has a lot of publisher news, but I find it always really helpful of like what's the bestseller. So kind of like when Britney's memoir was coming out a couple years ago, it was like, this is in demand. So I was like, okay, we're getting a lot of copies here and there's a lot of demand for it. So for me, it's very helpful just to know like what to anticipate in terms of demand because we don't always get it right. I'll be the first to admit that. So it's very helpful for staying up to date. And then Science Friday is always really fun, just for popular science books, which is a huge category, but also second NPR. Some other mainstream media outlets also do nonfiction, to a lesser extent, Vulture, The Atlantic, just some other outlets that are also just good to keep up with. And even like your review journals like Booklist, LJ, Kirkus, PW, of just kind of like, again, lurking. You don't have to read every single issue. No one has time for that. Maybe just seeing like what's trendy and what's buzzy. That way you can stay up to date. And then I agree that with everyone, lurking is a great word in our vocabulary now. So again, we listen, we don't judge, we lurk and we don't judge. We're just here to kind of like, see what's buzzing, just to stay up to date. And again, this is not comprehensive. So if you have a system that works best for you, I would love to hear about it. And please share it in the chat. This is kind of just how I stay up to date. And usually for me, it's primarily first and foremost, AWS and NetGalley, and then Book Pulse, and then diving into social media and awards and other, review outlets. So yeah, Allie, do you have any suggestions for staying up to date? I know it's so hard to.
No, I don't really have any suggestions except I find nonfiction books like little gems on my everyday search for everything else. Like I don't find myself going through lists of titles the way I do fiction books, trying to decide what to get. Nonfiction is more like, it pops out at me like this is a clear fit for my collection. And there are not as many of them. And so when I find really good ones, they always feel like a little treasure. And my patrons laugh because I get really excited about them. I'm like, look at this cool book I found. Because like somebody said, Lisa Martin said, her patrons seem to specifically like the kind of nonfiction you'd leaf through in a bookstore, but ultimately put back because you can't justify buying something you'll only read once. And that's definitely something I see with the nonfiction that does circulate is stuff that people could not afford to buy that book, to flip through it for 15, 20 minutes, but they're absolutely interested in looking at it. So I try to prioritize purchasing those books for sure. Like
Yeah.
that access point to me is really important for the community.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to do it too. I love Anna's comment too of noticing when the same book pops up in different places. That's also a great idea too. So if some things in like Science Friday, then I see it in NPR, then I see it somewhere else. I'm like, okay, this is getting a lot of buzz. Like I'm gonna pay attention to it now. So
Exactly. That's how nonfiction tends to come to me, or those always buy authors.
yeah,
Keeping an eye on those for sure.
yeah. Yeah, and if anyone has any questions, I'm also happy to do another judging cover and details with someone if they want. Just let me know, and I'm happy to answer any questions as well.
There are quite a few in the Q&A. Here's one specifically for you. It says, I loved how you broke down the way you judged Love Queenie in terms of who you'd recommend it to. That was excellent. Could you talk a little more about practicing that judging muscle in terms of helping introduce different readers to new types of nonfiction from a beginner but enthusiastic hand seller?
Oh, okay. Yes. So I will do references for this. This is Dear Reader, sorry, by Maggie Smith, which I just got about a week ago. It's coming out in April. So just as a reference, I love having like just a book for reference here. So I have not read her books. I know her name. And so if I don't know much about a book or an author, I'm just meeting someone for the first time and I'm saying like, hey, like, you're not really sure what type of nonfiction you like. You're just open to anything, which some people are open to anything. They're not really sure what they want. So I may just go through it with them for a few minutes, just kind of seeing like, do you want something fast paced? So kind of you're getting a feel for the mood here. So do you want something fast paced, leisurely paced? Do you want a little bit of escapism here? So for that, I'm kind of trying to feel like more for like a vibe for like, as the kids would say, of like what they're in the mood for. Like, doing a deep dive. So kind of asking pointing questions here, even before you judge the cover and the details is a good place to start. And then for this, just browsing through, like, it's very short, very like, quick questions and answers here for the table of contents, very snappy language. So if someone's like, I don't want to do reading anything too heavy, I just want something kind of light, like this is kind of lighthearted. You can kind of even browse through it. It seems very browsable. You don't have to read it cover to cover. You can kind of go at your own pace. So again, you're kind of feeling them out of just seeing like, how are you feeling, like almost like emotionally before you dive into this hand-selling the book to them. Just so you know, it's like, yeah, this is lighthearted. This might fit what you're looking for. Not really any citations and bibliography or index. So it's very much like, popular nonfiction here, read it at your own pace. And so kind of just talking to them and kind of getting to know what they're in the mood for is a good place to start. So I hope that answered your question a little bit.
The next question was, I've heard folks say they won't do YA adaptations because it feels like they are talking down to young readers. Any thoughts on that? I find it often more accessible. I think that's the author. Like Jason Reynolds does not make me feel talked down to, but some other authors do. Yeah.
I completely agree. Yeah, no, I love YA adaptations. So yeah, I think it really depends on the author, but some of them are really fantastic. And I think they're even great for adults too. So I'm a huge fan.
I am too. Can you say more about narrative nonfiction? I sometimes have a hard time identifying that genre. I think of narrative nonfiction as something that looks like a fiction book.
Yes.
But it isn't a fiction book.
That's pretty much how I would say it too. I know some people use narrative nonfiction and popular nonfiction interchangeably. And so I sometimes do that too. But I completely agree with Allie, though. It kind of like reads like a fiction book. So I would think of pretty much Eric Larson's books we mentioned earlier. Those to me are all narrative nonfiction. They read like, a nice historical fiction book, and you can read them pretty much in one sitting, which is really nice too. So.
See, I had a stack back here. Oh yeah, no, that's not. This, an Indigenous Peoples History of the United States. This is what I would consider narrative nonfiction.
Completely agree.
Pretty straightforward. It's just black ink. Whereas something like Secrets of the Octopus, even though it's a regular shape, is full of, much more detailed. So I don't know. I don't think that I would call this narrative nonfiction.
Yeah. No, I love the show and tell too.
I was cleaning off the shelf behind me and I just happened to find these 4 and I was like, oh, look how perfect they are.
Yes.
These are like some of my most favorite nonfiction in the building.
Yes.
Hidden Systems.
Oh, yes.
Oh, this one?
Yes, that one's really good.
It's so great.
Yeah. Oh, I'm loving these comments too. I agree. Deborah Bloom is definitely narrative nonfiction. Really good popular science author. Probably also a must buy. I would recommend it as well. And John Krakauer, definitely narrative nonfiction, and also probably a must buy author as well. Yeah.
Cheryl asked any other sources that specialize in YA nonfiction. I did not mean to interrupt you. I'm so sorry.
No, I'm just reading the comments.
Oh, I'm like off of the chat over on the Q&A.
Oh, okay.
I don't know of any sources that specialize just in YA nonfiction. I have like these that I have here, Beacon Press and Random House Graphic are some of those, but they're just like hit or miss. And I don't know if publishers just like occasionally come across a nonfiction and they're like, maybe this will work, or if they do a certain number of them per year or something like that. But there is a YALSA nonfiction award. Yes, YALSA releases 5 releases, the 5 finalists and then the title, the nonfiction title every year. So those are, my go-to source for sure, but that's 5 titles. And I always feel like up against the thousands of, fantasy YA books with the same characters I've seen 57 times this year.
Mm-hmm.
Nonfiction is so overlooked, and there's so much more that I wish we could see done with it because it's really good.
Yeah, completely agree. Yeah, and I feel like it doesn't always get enough review coverage as fiction. I know Alex was talking about that briefly earlier. And it's just really hard because there isn't always space and there isn't always like just time to cover all this nonfiction. There's so many great books and authors that get overlooked. And unfortunately, lots of books by people of color. So yeah, does really require some effort on your part, but I think it is worthwhile in the end because your patrons will really appreciate it.
Well, and like Alex said too, a lot of the nonfiction publishers got consolidated down and merged and then closed. And so I think publishing is just, they're so invested in these handful of romantasy titles that are going to sell 1 million copies, that this other stuff that really provides the variety for our readers doesn't get the marketing. So it's harder for us to even know it exists.
Yeah. And I've been loving romantasy lately as an escape from everything, but I agree, there's a lot of it lately.
Oh, I love it. Don't get me wrong.
Yes, same.
All right. We have just a couple of minutes left.
Yeah. Making sure I'm covering everything.
Okay, I see two. Nora, I'm going to answer your question about judging nonfiction and how to encourage hacking books, for how to help students judge a book that looks really long. My trick for this is read the first sentence and the last sentence of like the first 3 or 4 chapters. And then I'm really bad about spoiling the book for myself and going to read like the beginning of the last chapter. Because I find that I can, like, in 5 minutes, I can get a really good feel for if this is something that's actually going to get my attention and keep my attention. And then the last one that I think we should tackle was, wait, I think it disappeared.
Yeah, I'm responding to people as
Oh,
well.
are you typing answers? Okay, cool.
Yes.
Can graphic novels be narrative nonfiction?
I would say, I don't think so. To me, I think it's
We'll
more
call it
narrative.
graphic nonfiction then.
Yeah, graphic nonfiction is a category. So yeah, I would say no. Yeah. I do want to answer a few questions people had really briefly. For nonfiction book club recommendations, my first response is memoirs. People love a good memoir discussion, whether they love it or hate it, they will definitely read it. Someone's asking about personal finance books, how to narrow it down. I would go based on date. They get out of date really quickly. If you're short on, we all have a budget, just limit to the past year or two. Because even a finance book from like 5 years ago feels very out of date, especially right now. True crime authors, Michelle McNamara is my favorite. David Grant also ventures into true crime as well. And then Patrick Raddenkeefe. Those are my 3 immediates off the top of my head, making sure I'm getting all questions. Oh yeah, how to identify self-help books, whether people are grifters. That's a really tough one. This is gonna do, yeah, very hard. Just go with like classics. So Tabitha Brown, Susan Cain, Gretchen Rubin is really great. So I would just stick with that. And then if something, kind of like what Anna was saying earlier, if you see something in multiple places, then I would venture in and buy it. But in the meantime, if we're all short on budget and time, just stick with classics and then kind of work your way from there. So wanted to make sure I got all the questions. YA self-help, Allie, do you have any thoughts about that? You can do some, I think adult self-help kind of crosses over as well.
I think it absolutely does. There were years ago in the pre-COVID times when I did BFYA, there were a handful of like beauty and health and body positive fashion and stuff like that titles for young adults that would come out every year. And I don't see as much of that in the post-COVID times now that publishers have really consolidated so much. Yeah, Alex said YA self-help is mostly in memoir, bio, some like Teen Autistic's Guide to College. Yeah, you can find some specific identity self-help guides sometimes, general life self-help guides. You could probably find financial literacy and things like that, but they're not as broad as they used to be, I don't think.
Yeah, completely agree. Yes, I think
Thank you all immensely for everything you've put in the chat. I cannot wait to go back and read it and learn all of the things that you've shared.
And then I just responded really quickly. Someone had a graphic novel recommendation. Allie Brosh, obviously, for Hyperbole and a Half. And I know Alison Betchel has a new book coming out very, very soon. So that's my last promote. So yes, well, thank you all. And we can put our emails or Susan can send them. If you have any questions, follow-ups, we're happy to help and workshop anything with you. We can just chat for like hours, really. This goes by so quick. So thank you all for being here and taking the time, bearing with me with my technical difficulties. We appreciate it.
Thanks so
you
much,
so
y'all.
much. Thank you,
Yeah.
Allie and Stephanie. Yeah, it goes too fast.
It
But
does.
It does, it
we-
really does.
Yes.
We need time for a little break before our final workshop, Hot Tips for Hand Selling, which will begin in a few minutes. But while you wait, please enjoy these resources and recommendations from our sponsor, Penguin Random House Library Marketing.